Hello, everybody. My name's Tim Hughes, and I'm the Director of Communications for Spirit Invest. Today, I just want to provide an overview of some of the highlights of 2025 and look forward a little bit towards 2026. 2025 was an odd year insofar as a very bifurcated year. It was a year of geostrategic tension, political flux, and uncertainty in many respects. The election of Donald Trump, the new Trump administration, and particularly the imposition of tariffs on the 2nd of April really disrupted trade relations globally and had partners and others scrambling to find a new modus vivendi with the United States. South Africa has not yet found such a new modus vivendi with the United States. It was also a year of conflict. The war between Russia and Ukraine continued and in fact intensified as well. And as we speak, it remains unresolved. One of the low points of the year, of course, was the war in Gaza, and even then extending that conflict into areas such as Iran and Yemen as well, and even into Qatar. Fortunately, those conflicts have now appeared to be resolved, and we are looking like we have not just a ceasefire, but the potential for a peace agreement, which is most encouraging. And if the Middle East stabilizes, obviously this is not just good for conflict areas and somewhat conflict between people, but very good in terms of energy prices, trade relations, economic relations. So it's ultimately was a good year, in the Middle East. In terms of South Africa, it likewise was a very mixed year. We had great difficulty in the first half of this year passing a budget. We had 3 attempts at passing a budget and finally did, with the issue being around whether or not there would be an increase in VAT. I think if we learned something, we learned that the government of national unity has to work together on major issues, including the budget. And that's probably the most important policy issue of any government, is their budget. And ultimately, we found a way through this. And this is quite a healthy thing for South Africa. And in fact, we saw some green shoots in South Africa too. We had no power cuts, which was a welcome change. We're seeing some improvement in terms of our infrastructure. We're seeing some improvement in our harbours and in our rail infrastructure as well. Encouragingly, in terms of governance, as much as it's very, very painful, we're beginning to see more public accountability in terms of issues such as bribery and corruption. So we've had some very, very public hearings with regard to the Matlanga Commission and the special committee within Parliament assessing issues relating to the National Prosecuting Authority and the South African Police Service. So that's all on the kind of political geostrategic level. But what was interesting about 2025 was how the markets shook off all of this uncertainty in the second half of the year, shook off the uncertainty and performed brilliantly. So we had really strong performance from the United States, particularly the NASDAQ, of course, led by the Magnificent Seven. And in a sense, that's a concern because much of the performance came from these 7 particular stocks. And that means that the market was highly concentrated as well. So I think there's an element of concern now that as much as the Mag 7 have performed well and artificial intelligence is the new flavor of the year, if not the decade, some of the expenditure on artificial intelligence may well have consequences and something we have to look towards carefully in 2026. But back home, we had a really stellar second half of the year in our markets too. Now, that was driven admittedly by a massive surge in the gold price, way beyond $4,000 an ounce. So our mining houses are creating significant cash flow, free cash flow. Platinum has done well for us, even silver is running now. So the resources sector has done brilliantly well. But our blue chip companies have done well. So our Naspers and our processors generally have performed quite well this year. So a number of our financial services groups and our industrial groups as well have served very, very well, have served the markets and clients very, very well. So a mixed year, but one that actually in the second half of the year was quite a strong year globally, locally as well. Now, just looking ahead to 2026, it's a risky business to begin forecasting what you think 2026 is going to look like. But if you extrapolate from current trends, and some of the indices that we're seeing, some of the patterns we're seeing, 2026 is actually looking better. It's looking like a year in which we consolidate the fact that inflation's been brought under control. The IMF is forecasting slightly stronger economic growth in certain areas. Asia will continue to grow. The emerging markets are looking quite good. It's true there's a degree of uncertainty about Europe and the United States, but both areas, we have some very strong blue chip companies there as well. I think one needs to see how the Russia-Ukraine conflict plays itself out. But fortunately, at least now there's a peace agreement on the table that's being discussed. And I think if that is agreed to, if we have a ceasefire in Ukraine between Ukraine and Russia, we will see Europe bouncing back quite strongly as well. In terms of South Africa, we're heading towards local government elections, so we're going to have a very, very political year again in 2026, and that will possibly place strain on the government of national unity. So we need to watch out for that. But I think it's a very good opportunity for ordinary people to express their interests at the ballot box at the local government level. Finally, in terms of the economic outlook, our GDP forecasts are slightly better than they were in 2025. It looks like we're bringing inflation under control. There's a new target rate of 3% from the Reserve Bank. Some of our companies are particularly well positioned. Some are offering great value. Some have fantastic growth potential. And I think all in all, we're looking forward to a better 2026 than a 2025.